I watched her from the attic. Yeah, that's how this starts. I was crouched between fiberglass insulation and a forgotten Christmas wreath, holding my breath like some sad cliché. Watching my wife, the woman I shared a life, a mortgage, and a dog with, giggle on the phone like a teenager in heat. She thought I was in Atlanta for a tech conference. She even kissed me goodbye that morning, made me a sandwich for the fake flight. Turkey and cheddar. No mustard, just how I like it. She packed my luggage herself. But I never got on the plane. Instead, I looped back in a rental car, parked 2 blocks away, and let myself in through the basement window I knew she never locked. It was all quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard it. Laughter. Not hers alone, his. Deep. Confident. Like a guy who was used to being told yes, without ever having to ask. I climbed to the attic to think, but curiosity got the best of me. I pulled open the vent and looked through the slats. She was wearing the blue robe. The one I bought her for our anniversary. She only wore it when she wanted to feel expensive. She poured wine, my wine, from the cellar she said she never touched, and lit candles. Candles she said gave her headaches. They laughed. They kissed. Right there on the couch we picked out together at that overpriced showroom downtown. She never kissed me like that. It was surreal, like watching someone else live in your skin. But I didn't confront her. Not that night. I waited. 3 hours in that attic, silent, sweating, while they watched movies and whispered things I wish I could forget. When he left around midnight, she stood by the door smiling for a full minute after it closed, like she was remembering every touch. I stayed there till dawn. Then I left, for real this time. I didn't slam the door. I didn't take the car. I just walked away, but not before leaving one thing behind. A single sticky note on the fridge. Your headache candles smell amazing. The sticky note stayed on the fridge for 2 days. I know because I came back to watch. Not proud of that. But I'm past shame. I rented a car under a fake name. Parked it at the top of the hill where I could see the kitchen window through the gap in our hedge. I brought a cheap pair of binoculars and a bag of gas station pretzels I never touched. Just sat there, watching, waiting. The first morning after I left, she didn't even go near the fridge. She drank coffee straight from the French press, still in the same robe. She scrolled her phone like nothing had changed. No panic. No tears. Just silence. The second morning, she opened the fridge and froze. I saw it. That tiny jolt in her shoulder blades. The way her hand hovered over the sticky note like it might burn her fingers. She stood there for a full minute. Then she crumpled it. Not slowly. Not thoughtfully. Violently. Like it had insulted her. Like the paper had teeth. She tossed it straight into the trash, walked into the hallway, and started dialing. I couldn't hear the call, but I didn't need to. I knew who she was calling. 5 minutes later, she was pacing the living room, phone clutched tight, mouth moving faster than her brain. She was panicking now, whisper screaming. I recognized the rhythm. It was the same way she used to scold the dog after it chewed her heels, soft fury, disguised as control. That's when I realized something else. She hadn't told him. Not yet. He didn't know I knew. She was trying to contain it, manage the fallout. She wasn't devastated. She was strategizing. The way her mind worked, it made my stomach twist. It wasn't grief. It was PR. Like she was managing a scandal, not a marriage. She didn't love me. She loved the structure I gave her. The quiet background hum of stability while she lived a double feature life starring someone else. It hit me then. I had been a character in her story. Not even a main one. More like a dependable extra. Later that night, she called my sister. That part one hadn't expected. She told her I'd vanished. Said she was scared. Said something wasn't right with me lately. That I'd been off. Off. I rebuilt our entire kitchen by hand last summer. I learned to cook gluten-free meals when she decided she was sensitive. I gave up poker night because she didn't like the way I smelled like whiskey when I came home. And now I was off. I nearly drove down the hill. Nearly kicked that front door open and screamed until the siding cracked. But I didn't. Because ghosts don't haunt houses with screams. They haunt with silence. She reported me missing. That part still gets me. It wasn't even 72 hours after I left. Not even the official window for concern. And yet, there she was, standing on our porch, arms crossed like she was posing for a crime doc reenactment. 2 officers showed up, one young and awkward, the other older, with that tired, seen-it-all look. She greeted them with tearless eyes, and her voice all cracked in the middle like she'd been rehearsing distress, but couldn't quite find the right frequency. I watched the whole thing from the neighbor's yard, hiding behind a dying maple tree like some washed-up horror movie villain. Binoculars dug into my face, hands frozen around them, knuckles white. I could read her lips. "He's never done this before," she said. That part was true. Then came the lies. She told them I'd been acting strangely, that I'd stopped sleeping, started muttering to myself in the garage, and had withdrawn all our savings. That last one was the most insulting, because she knew damn well I left her everything. I didn't touch a cent of our joint account. What I took was mine. Quiet money I'd been stashing since the first time she said, "You're lucky I haven't left you." She told the officers I might be a danger to myself. I almost laughed. The projection was so thick it could have been carved in marble. If anyone was dangerous in that house, it wasn't me. What struck me most was how fast she went from guilty to victim. It was seamless, natural, like flipping a light switch. One minute she was cheating. The next, she was worried sick, clutching her arms, biting her lip like some daytime soap character. She walked them through the house. Our house. Pointing at my closet, at the absence of my toothbrush, at the pillow I used to sleep on. "He didn't take anything important," she said. That line gutted me. I was apparently not something important. They left without filing an official report. Said they'd keep an eye out. Gave her a card with a number to call if anything changed. She thanked them like she was accepting an award. Then she shut the door, leaned against it for a moment, and for the first time since I left, she cried. Not sobbed, not wailed, but her face cracked. Her mouth quivered. Her knees buckled just a little. I saw her slide down the inside of the door, fists pressed to her lips. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. This woman, who just days ago had lied to my face and laughed in the arms of another man, was now breaking into tiny pieces behind a door I used to open every day. But it didn't change anything, because I wasn't going back, and I wasn't done watching. That night, I broke into my own house. I waited until the lights were off and the dog was asleep at the foot of the bed, still mine, though I left him with her. I used the spare key I knew she hadn't thought to change. Quiet, deliberate movements, just like I used to when she had migraines. I didn't steal anything. I just stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her sleep in the same sheets we used to fight under, dream under, fake forgiveness under. I left something else that night. A single matchbook. From the cafe in Black Mountain. The one where she bought the red mug. She'd know what it meant, and I wanted her to sit with that. It started with a single message. No greeting. No punctuation. No attempt to mask the desperation leaking through the pixels. "Did you leave that?" That was it. Sent at 2:14 a.m. I was sitting in the back of my car in a Walmart parking lot, eating trail mix and watching a raccoon circle a tipped-over shopping cart. I hadn't planned to reply. I told myself that silence was stronger, cleaner. But something about the wording, that, told me she knew. She wasn't asking if I had left the matchbook. She was asking if I had seen what she didn't want seen. I stared at the message for maybe 20 minutes, phone lit against the cracked windshield, thumb hovering over the keyboard like I could type a bullet and walk away. I didn't send a full sentence, just 2 words. "You know." The reply came so fast it felt rehearsed. "Where are you? Please, just tell me you're okay." Funny how quickly you become a person again when you're gone. Suddenly, I was Wally again. Not passive-aggressive, not controlling, not just a little boring. Now I was a missing husband. A mystery. An open loop in a story she hadn't finished writing. And it was driving her insane. I didn't respond that time. Not for 3 days. During those 3 days, she tried everything. The texts ranged from polite to venomous to heartbreaking and back again. There were apologies. Accusations. Voice notes where she breathed heavy into the mic and whispered, "Please." A photo of her hand holding the matchbook, followed by a string of messages in all caps. "How much do you know? Did you spy on me? This is insane. You can't just disappear. I'm not the villain here. Wally, answer me, please." I still didn't reply, but I listened to the voice notes. Every single one. At night. On loop. Her voice would tremble sometimes, then harden mid-sentence, like she couldn't decide which mask to wear. It was fascinating. If I weren't the one married to her, I'd call it brilliant performance art. Then she made a mistake. On the 4th day, around 9:30 p.m., she sent a message that wasn't meant for me. "He hasn't come back. I think he's watching me." She meant to send it to him. Ellery. That name. God, I hated how it tasted in my mouth. But that text? That cracked everything open. Because for the first time since I'd left, I knew she was afraid. Not of me. I was never a threat. But of losing control. Of being seen. Of the little world she'd built with her secret lover becoming unstable, slippery, loud. I could imagine the way she clutched her phone afterward, her stomach dropping as she realized the message went to the wrong person. To me. I didn't reply. I just drove back to the house. Not to break him this time. Just to see what fear looked like on her face. From the tree line, I saw every light in the house on. The curtains were open, but the doors were locked. She paced. Checked the window. Opened the front door twice. Let the dog out for 30 seconds, then yanked him back in. Her whole body language screamed paranoia. And I stood there, 30 feet away, watching the woman who broke me unravel under her own lies. The next morning, I sent her a photo. It was her, standing barefoot at the sink, 2 nights earlier, sipping wine from that same red mug. No words. No context. Just the image. She didn't respond for hours. But when she did, it was exactly what I needed to see. I'm scared. Please, just tell me what you want. And right then, I realized something. She still thought this was about revenge. It wasn't. It had never been about revenge. It was about removal. She didn't know it yet, but I had already erased myself from our shared accounts, closed the utilities, canceled every joint subscription, and started transferring the deed of the cabin upstate into my name only. Slowly, legally, cleanly, quietly. Because sometimes, you don't burn down the house. You just steal the oxygen. I knew the moment he arrived. I was parked 2 houses down, in the borrowed gray Camry I'd started thinking of as my second skin. Rain blurred the windshield, each drop making the streetlights pulse like strobes. It was almost midnight when his motorcycle purred into view, low, arrogant, like it knew it didn't belong in a neighborhood where people grew basil and scheduled HOA meetings. He didn't park in the driveway. He pulled up on the curb, tossed his helmet into the grass, and walked up to the front door like he owned the deed to her soul. I could see his reflection in the side window. Smirking. Careless. She let him in immediately. I couldn't hear what they said, but I didn't need to. Their silhouettes danced on the living room walls. She was pacing. He stood with his hands on his hips. She gestured toward the fridge. I knew what she was pointing at, the empty space where the matchbook had been. They argued. Not loudly, but with body language that screamed. He kept shaking his head, stepping back. She tried to touch him twice. He pulled away both times. I saw her grab her phone and show him something. Probably my messages. Or worse, the photo I sent of her at the sink. I imagine what he must have thought seeing it. That little sliver of domestic vulnerability. Her barefoot in our kitchen, drinking from my glass, lit by my light. He didn't like it. At one point, he turned toward the front window. Our eyes didn't meet, but something primal in my gut twisted anyway. The kind of twist that comes right before a deer bolts or a soldier ducks. I sank lower in the seat, heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted out. Then something changed. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small black object. At first, I thought it was a flask. It wasn't. It was a small revolver. He held it low, discreet, like he'd done it before. That changed everything. Darla stepped back when she saw it. Hands up, not panicked, but startled. She said something sharp. Her body stiffened. He laughed. Not a loud laugh. Just enough to say, you don't get to be in charge anymore. So that was it. The guy she risked everything for wasn't just a poet or a failed musician or whatever nonsense she'd convinced herself. He was dangerous, and she had let him into our house. The same house where I once built her a bookshelf for her vintage mystery novels. The same kitchen I remodeled by hand while she found herself in Arizona for 2 months. He walked past her, deeper into the hallway, heading toward the bedroom. I didn't hesitate. I got out of the car. Rain soaked me instantly, but I didn't care. My feet moved on instinct, fast, quiet, furious. I went around the back of the house and pulled the basement window open again. Same way I had the first night. She never fixed it. Inside, the house smelled like her perfume and damp air. I heard them above me, muffled voices, floorboards creaking. I didn't have a weapon, didn't even have a plan. Just rage. Cold, controlled rage that had been crystallizing for weeks. But then I stopped. Because I heard her crying. Not fake crying. Not performative. Real, visceral crying. Her voice breaking mid-word. Chest heaving sobs that pulled the air out of the walls. She wasn't in control anymore. He was yelling now. The words didn't matter. Just the tone. Threat. Power. And in that moment, I realized something awful. She didn't deserve my sympathy. But no one deserved him. So I waited. In the dark. Hands clenched, breath slow. Letting the house hold its breath with me. Letting the silence grow louder. Because if Ellery thought he was the only ghost in this story, he was about to learn otherwise. It happened on a Sunday night. The kind of night where everything is so quiet. Even the walls seem to listen. Ellery stayed. I watched him walk out to his bike around 10:30 p.m., check the saddlebag, then turned back toward the house like he'd made a decision. He didn't leave. He didn't go home. He just locked the door behind him like it was his. Like that house belonged to him now. And she let him. The porch light clicked off a few minutes later, and the world outside went dark. No headlights. No movement. Just rainwater dripping from the gutters, and that creeping, skin-tight kind of silence that settles when a mistake is being born. I waited until 2:14 a.m. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink. I just sat in the car, soaked in condensation, watching the digital clock flash until I knew the house was still. The kind of still where breathing slows and muscles forget they're supposed to hold grudges. That's when I moved. I used the basement window again. I knew exactly which floorboards creaked and which ones didn't. I could have navigated that house in a coma. Darla had once called it my obsession, my habit of memorizing everything. Now it was the only thing keeping me from being caught. She was in the guest room. That surprised me. But then again, maybe it didn't. Maybe Ellery had taken our bedroom, the way he'd taken my place in every other way. Maybe she didn't want to sleep beside a loaded revolver on the nightstand. Maybe she was finally afraid. I crept through the hallway, slow and deliberate, heart pounding in my throat like a warning drum. I didn't have a weapon, just gloves, a USB drive, and an old burner phone. I wasn't there for confrontation. I was there to finish something. In the bedroom, Ellery was asleep. He snored with that smugness only truly awful people possess. The kind of sleep that says, I've never faced consequences in my life. The revolver was on the dresser, carelessly tossed beside his wallet and a half-empty bottle of cologne. The man was a walking cliché, woodsy musk and bad decisions. I didn't touch him. I didn't even breathe near him. Instead, I moved to the closet. Quietly, carefully, like I was handling live wires. In the far back corner, behind an old box of scarves she hadn't touched since we lived in Portland, was a locked chest. The one I wasn't supposed to know the code to. But of course I did. Her birthday. Backwards. 0811. It clicked open like it wanted to be found. Inside, a stack of journals, 3 photo albums, a shoebox of old letters tied in a fraying blue ribbon, and a small fireproof pouch. That was what I needed. The pouch held documents, real estate records, old tax returns, and one folded sheet that mattered more than all of them. The agreement we signed when we bought the off-grid cabin upstate. Technically joint property, but in reality, mine. I paid for it. Built most of it. She added plants and curtains and called it ours. I snapped a photo of the document, front and back. Uploaded it to the burner. Then I slid the pouch back exactly as I found it, locked the chest, and whispered a silent goodbye to everything else in there. The memories. The mistakes. The man I was when I thought she loved me. Then I did something petty. I took his wallet. Not the cash, just the ID. Just enough to make him question himself in the morning. Just enough to ruin his day without breaking the law. I slid it into the mailbox outside as I left. A breadcrumb trail for someone who'd never been hunted. By 3:10 a.m., I was back in the car, soaked in sweat and adrenaline, chest aching with the weight of restraint. Because the truth is, I could have hurt him. I could have woken him up, dragged him into the yard, made him apologize to the night sky. I could have shattered his bones the way he tried to shatter what was left of my name in that house. But I didn't. Because Ellery wasn't the real villain. He was just the match she struck. The fire? That was always going to be mine. 3 days after I stepped back into that house, after I walked through the bones of what used to be my life and stole back pieces of myself, I sent her an envelope. But I didn't mail it. I placed it right between the screen door and the main door, tucked just barely enough to be seen when she came home. I knew her Monday routine. Knew she always went to the co-op on Hawthorne around 4 p.m., then drove the long way home so she could listen to the same self-help podcast she swore was transformational. I knew the exact window of time I had, and I used it with the same precision I used to plan our anniversary trips she barely remembered. The envelope was unmarked. Just her name, Darla, written in my handwriting, the same cursive I used on her birthday cards and grocery lists. The paper had that soft weight to it, heavy enough to suggest importance, light enough to suggest nothing was inside but paper. I watched her find it from down the block. She paused on the porch, holding 2 grocery bags, keys dangling from her fingers. When she saw the envelope, something in her posture changed. She went stiff, still, like the world around her suddenly went silent, and she needed to confirm she hadn't imagined it. Then she reached for it slowly, carefully, as if it might explode. She didn't go inside. She opened it right there on the porch. Inside, there were only 2 things, a photograph and a handwritten note. The photo was old, 5 years old, maybe more. It was us, standing in front of the cabin during the first snow of that winter. Her cheeks red, nose buried in my scarf, her gloved hand held tightly in mine. She was smiling in that half-real, half-frozen way you do when you're both happy and cold, and I looked like someone who had no idea he was a placeholder in his own story. The note was shorter than she'd expect. I built you a world. You invited a storm. That was it. I watched her read it. Twice. Her lips moving silently over the words. Her face unreadable, but her body saying everything. Shoulders tightening. Chest rising faster. She folded the note and tucked it back inside the envelope like it was evidence. Then she turned and looked straight down the street. Not at me. Not directly. But close enough. She stood there for almost 2 minutes, eyes scanning every car, every shadow, trying to guess where I might be. I wasn't in the Camry this time. I'd swapped it out the night before for an old Subaru with a crack in the rear taillight. Nothing recognizable. Just another ghost on the curb. She went inside, envelope in hand. 10 minutes later, Ellery showed up again. I watched him pound on the door. She let him in, reluctantly. His helmet dropped hard on the tile in the entryway, and he started pacing the living room before the door had even closed. Something was off about him. Paranoid. Twitchy. His movements weren't arrogant this time. They were reactive, erratic. He wasn't just visiting anymore. He was hiding. I could see it now. The dynamics had shifted. Whatever fantasy they'd built together was cracking. She wasn't smiling at him now. She was pointing, talking fast. Her arms were crossed, and her head shook with every sentence. He tried to touch her. She backed away. She showed him the envelope. His whole body changed. Stiffened. He reached for it. She yanked it back. He shouted something. She flinched. This time, I wasn't scared of him. This time, he looked scared. She stormed down the hallway and disappeared. He stayed there, still, for a moment, then dropped onto the couch like the weight of everything was pressing down at once. He didn't move again for a long time. That night, she called the cabin's landline. It rang 5 times, then stopped. She tried again 30 minutes later. I watched the burner phone buzz softly on the table beside my hand. I didn't answer, didn't touch it, but I let it ring, and I imagined her on the other end, wrapped in a blanket, pacing, panicking, trying to figure out just how far this would go. Because now she knew the rules had changed. I wasn't haunting her anymore. I was building something. A story. And she didn't know the ending. The cabin always creaked in the mornings. Not from ghosts or age, but from the way the sun slipped through the trees and touched the beams unevenly, warming one part of the floor while the rest stayed cool. It made everything shift slightly, like the building itself was stretching its arms after sleep. It had been 3 weeks since I left that envelope. 2 since I'd seen her. 1 since I turned off the burner phone for good. I didn't run. That was never the plan. I retreated. I took what was mine, the things she overlooked, the parts of me she never really tried to understand, and I rebuilt something from them. Not a revenge story. Not a cautionary tale. Just a man, a cabin, and a silence that finally meant peace instead of punishment. No cameras. No locks. No noise. Just breath and trees and time. The morning I saw the car, I was sitting on the front steps with a mug of coffee and a book I tried to finish for the last 7 years. The tires crunched slow over the gravel. It wasn't Ellery. He'd disappeared. Maybe left the state. Maybe found someone else to play God with. He was irrelevant now. The car was hers. She stepped out slowly, like she was afraid the ground might break under her weight. She didn't look like the woman I'd last seen through binoculars. She looked smaller, realer, like someone who had stopped pretending. She didn't bring bags, didn't wear makeup, didn't bring a plan. She walked halfway up the path, stopped, and held up something in her hand. The photo. From the envelope. The two of us in the snow. I never earned that smile, she said, voice soft, carried by wind. I didn't say anything. She stood there for a while, eyes scanning the porch, the tools leaning against the wall, the fresh firewood stacked too neatly. She looked at the space like it was a version of me she'd never met. Then she sat down on a large flat stone by the steps, wrapped her arms around her knees, and just sat. No begging. No explanations. She didn't even ask to come in. So I did something neither of us expected. I got up, went inside, poured her a cup of coffee, and brought it back out without a word. Set it beside her, then sat back down where I was. We didn't talk for a long time. Not about what happened. Not about him. Not about how things broke. We just let the quiet between us breathe like it hadn't been allowed to in years. Eventually, she said, I'm not here to fix anything. I nodded. But I wanted to say thank you. For walking away when I didn't have the strength. I looked at her then. Really looked. There was no performance left in her. No mask. Just someone who finally understood the cost of what she burned down. And somehow, that mattered. Maybe not enough to rebuild, but enough to forgive. So we sat, two people who had once been a storm and a shelter, now just two humans on opposite ends of a mistake. No fury, no bitterness, just peace. Before she left, she placed the photo back on the step beside me. I'm not taking it, she said. That version of me doesn't exist anymore. When she drove away, I didn't watch the car vanish. I looked up at the trees instead. The sun was rising through them. It hit the window just right, casting that perfect warm line across the kitchen table. The one I built with my hands. And for the first time in months, I stepped back inside and closed the door. Not to shut the world out, but to finally live in it again.